Welcome to the Pet Loss Companion. I'm Dolan-Del Vecchio, and I'm here with my colleague and friend and co-author, Nancy Saxton-Lopez. And this is a broadcast that we do every Thursday at 6 o'clock Eastern Time. And we do the broadcast because we want to bring the knowledge and experience and wisdom that we gained through many years of leading support groups for people who had just lost a pet, or maybe sometimes we're having an anniversary, or for some reason would like to benefit from the support of a group. We learned so much about the experience of loss, and we brought that experience into a book called The Pet Loss Companion: Healing Advice from Family Therapists Who Lead Pet Loss Groups. And we started this broadcast to bring some of that information to a larger audience. So we're happy to be here to share with you, and we welcome your questions and comments during the broadcast afterwards. And we would like very much for this to be an open conversation. So Nancy, you want to get us started today?
Yeah. Ken, you and I talked about, we had some comments and questions that came up over the last week. And one was very interesting that will be a little provocative maybe for some people, but the question was, are pets reincarnated? I hope they are. That would be the best for me. Do they have souls? Some people say they don't. I don't understand. They are such beautiful souls. No, this is, some people believe that animals have souls, and some people may not believe that. And some people believe in reincarnation and as there, and some do not. Now, I think you had someone that you had spoken to about this.
Well, we had a comment on the last session that we did. Somebody was saying that they were very concerned about this, and they were also concerned that animal communicators an animal communicator had told them that animals don't reincarnate. And I think it's a really interesting topic. Well, first of all, I feel like these are questions that we can't know with any certainty. We can't know the answers with any certainty. We can know through personal experience. We can have deep beliefs because of what we've experienced and what we believe. But I feel like this is terrain that's very uncertain in many ways. And I'll tell you, and we were talking about this just a few minutes ago, that when I had an editor look at the final draft of our book, one of the things he said was, you mention a number of places in the book, you call animals souls. You mention they have souls. And there are lots of people who don't believe that animals have souls. I remember saying to him, of course they have souls. I mean, it's very clear to me when I look into the eyes of my cat or dog or any animal friend that they are alive in very much the same way that I am alive and that you are alive. And there's somebody looking out from behind those eyes. And so that to me is a soul. And so, but this person was very distressed because an animal communicator who they had been in touch with had said they don't reincarnate. And I believe that there's evidence that human beings reincarnate, and there's evidence that animals reincarnate. People can tell stories that are pretty clear for them that demonstrate reincarnation. And who's to argue with another person's experience?
Well, also, wasn't there a movie? There was a movie out a few years ago, A Dog's Life. I'm not sure if that.
The dog.
And didn't that dog reincarnate times?
Yeah, many times. And that may be the way it is. I mean, certainly there are religions that believe very strongly in reincarnation. There are Eastern religions, there are indigenous religions across the globe where that's considered to be the way it is. Like, that's just the way it is. So I always feel like I don't know when, and if you believe that, then that's valid. And
of course,
there's nothing that I'm going to do to try to dispel that. I am a little concerned that anybody would tell somebody, no, animals do not reincarnate. Where are they getting that information?
Because would they really know exactly, like we're saying, it's a different terrain, we're not 100% sure. Would people do believe in reincarnation and feel they are? Some people don't. Again, I think it's more of a belief system. However, I was looking this up prior to going on air, and there is a communicator that I found, an animal communicator, and this was one of the paragraphs. Over the years and many hundreds of consultations, I've learned that there are many possibilities and variations on the answers to reincarnation. I've witnessed many full reincarnations of clients' animals, as well as partial reincarnations, soul blending, I'm not sure what that is, visits, walk-ins. The variations are endless. It's not a one-size-fit-all answer. However, she also did say that she had not experienced that with her own animals.
Yeah, and there's terms there that I don't understand either.
Right.
However, I feel like the complexity of it speaks for itself.
Exactly.
This is very complex, and there are many viewpoints on it, and there are many experiences in this area. And there are also, what we're also approaching are these questions that, because they are fraught with uncertainty, we can't really resolve them. And so they tend to be with us for the duration. Like, I can wonder, where is my beloved little Jack now? Jack died several years ago. Where is he? He's in my heart, I know that, but is he somewhere else? Does he have a new? I remember when I had a cat who was very dear to me, and she died. And I remember burying her and writing her a card in which I wrote, I hope you awaken into a brilliant new life. That was soothing for me. And I believe that may be what happens, that we go from one existence into another. But I can hope for that, but I can't know for certain. Right. Can't know for certain.
And it goes to souls too. I think we talked about this in another episode, that for Catholicism for a long time had said something about animals not having souls, and people were very upset with that in the group, right? They came in and they said, I don't know, I can't believe that. But Pope Francis really kind of squashed that and said, of course, they do have souls. So I think that that's helpful for those people who were very upset, not thinking that their animals had an afterlife of sorts. But again, it's whatever it is, and obviously anyone can look up about animal communicators in their areas, or what they believe, or what they've seen or found out about reincarnation. And it's something that, if it's helpful for someone, to do it, to see, it makes it a little bit easier to know that maybe they live on or they come back.
Yeah, I mean, to me, if we have souls, then animals have souls.
Right.
That's to me, that's sort of self-evident. It's like, because I do believe that my experience with many, many different kinds of animals tells me that they feel emotions pretty similarly to the way we do, that they are worried for their physical safety the way that we are, that they have the same sorts of needs for food and shelter and affiliation with others, that, or not. Some animals don't. Some animals are more they're more comfortable alone, but they have the same sort of interior existence that I see in other human beings. And to me, that's, to say an animal doesn't have a soul would be very similar to saying another human being doesn't have a soul. If I do, they do. That's kind of the way I see it.
And I do believe that also, Ken. And just another note before we move on, I know after one of my first dogs died, my husband and I saw a little bunny outside, and our first thing was, maybe that's Toddy coming back. you know.
Mhm.
So, I
Mhm.
mean, it's a wish, I think, also that you want to see them come back in some
Yeah,
way.
of course. Yeah. Yeah, we always long for who we've lost, right?
Yeah,
It's a very, very hard thing. And we have these questions over and over and over again. So another question that a person who commented on one of the videos raised was, I can feel I can feel like I don't want to be here because they're not here,
mhm,
and at the same time not feel like I want to hurt myself, like I'm suicidal. And that I think is a really valid distinction to make, that you can
for sure.
feel so pained that you don't want to feel anything right now. You don't want to be present. You don't want to be here, but not necessarily meaning that you are inclined in any way to hurt yourself,
Right.
take
And
your own life.
that's a pretty typical feeling for a lot of folks who,
Hmm.
are very, very attached to their animals,
I'm
and
sorry about
it's okay, it's as me. Um,
this, Esme.
they're very connected to them, and when they die, they just don't they're so distraught that they wanna be with them. I mean, they would
Hmm.
come in, right, and say, "I wanna be with my animal. I wanna be with wherever they are." Um, and again, that doesn't mean that a person is suicidal, although it could, we'd have to be careful with that. But it's not, it's a very typical response because the relationship was so incredibly important to them that they felt that they could not move on without
Hmm.
still being with them.
Hmm.
So I like the tale. So, but it, it's a hard thing for people. I mean, eventually through the grieving process, they do start to integrate the loss, and they don't necessarily feel like that anymore. But it's a pretty common initial reaction,
Yeah, I don't want to be here if they're not here
right?
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So there, and this is another one similar to that. I think another question came up. My life has changed. How can I work with that? I miss Henry so much. He was my soulmate. So again, here's a person who so attached to their beloved animal, and it when they die, it creates someone to feel like they can't go on. They have a hole in them that can't be filled. They maybe feel like they've lost an appendage.
Yeah.
They get immobilized with first denial and then maybe shock, depending on the death, and then just not being able to function, to be able to experience any kind of other feeling but emptiness and sadness, which is also, we heard through that.
Yeah. I think that so much of this comes down to acknowledging and validating that kind of void, that kind of pain, and just going through the motions of life
Mhm.
regardless. You just keep going through the motions of life, and at the same time acknowledging the loss and allowing time to help you to become more accustomed to the reality that Henry, in this case, is not here anymore. And realizing that the way you feel right now is not necessarily the way you will feel for all the time that follows. And to trust in that, if it's hard to trust in much else, to trust that time does play a role in helping us begin to take the reality in a way that is not so brutal.
Well, it's interesting because people, a lot of people can't tolerate the pain. So it's hard for them to go through the process because it comes and goes, ebbs
Yeah.
and flows. And they said, but I don't want to feel like this anymore. I can't tolerate it. I don't want it. And, but that's kind of the journey. And so it does take a period of time, and people get so upset that they say, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I can't feel like this anymore. But again, time does move them along to a place that they can integrate the loss a little better.
And there is something to be said for constructive distractions too. So
Yes.
if you do not have any time where this is not like just like weighing you like in the pit of your stomach and you just feel horrible, then try different things. Try different things. Try listening to music or doing some things that feel creative for you or doing exercise or just try other things that are constructive distractions. And much of this has to do with filling the time in a way that is at least not in any way destructive or harmful, and just moving forward in the process of life, really.
Mhm. It's hard because people, when you're grieving and you're so sad and you become depressed in a lot of cases, it's hard to be active. The problem
Yeah.
is that inactivity or passivity creates more depression. And so, it's helpful too if to try to, exercise, to try to maybe change your routine a little bit, to try to do something a little bit different. Maybe you take walks to the place that you walked your dog or sat in the space with where your cat was, but then get up and do something. A lot of times though, people can do something in their memory, which I think is kind of interesting. It motivates people. I think death sometimes motivates people to do something different, and they get preoccupied in that. You see that with humans all the time. Somebody, a young one is killed or dies, and they mobilize themselves to be more verbal or to talk about what happened and that there needs to be changes, and sometimes that really helps too.
Yeah, and any way that you can get support from others, any way that you can connect with others who will be respectful of how you're feeling. So if you can do that online now, because it may not yet be safe where you are to go and meet in any sort of face-to-face capacity, if you can get online and maybe write a remembrance or communicate
Mhm.
with others about your loss, or you can talk to people over the phone or maybe even connect with a therapist. There's something about being able to have some degree of social support that is of fundamental healing value for many, many people.
Mhm. It's interesting because there was one client that I was working with who um, was upset with his dog's death, and he believed that part of the problem was some of the procedures or a procedure at the desk of the hospital where his dog was treated. And this is, believe me, this is not anything to do with all vets. This just happened to be his
Hmm.
experience. So he went home and he did research and he wrote a 5-page letter, to the hospital. And the hospital actually acknowledged him and found out that maybe they needed to change their procedures a little bit and did so,
Hmm.
which is quite, I mean, I'd never heard, and they also reimburses the money he spent, which I thought was, wow. I mean, that's very different than I'd had ever, thought that could happen. I guess it has, but, I never heard that. But it's hard, started to heal him, that he could do something for others and go
Right.
into this particular hospital.
Yeah.
So,
And the fact that they were respectful is
yeah,
so valuable, that they weren't defensive, that they validated
yeah,
what he said. And it probably has a lot to do also with the way in which he communicated what he had to communicate. And so that sort of advocacy certainly can be
yeah.
important too. And it also, one of the things that strikes me in that account is that there must have been a tone that was constructive. There must have been a tone that was coming at this from a place of, I want to be helpful to others. I want to be helpful to your practice, not attacking.
Oh,
and
no,
not furious.
He's a real research guy, and I think he used facts. I mean, he really went from that to say, listen, this is what happened. This is how it worked. And they could recognize that maybe they needed to do something different, which I think is great.
It really is. And it highlights the fact that errors are made.
Yeah.
People are fallible. Even healing professionals will sometimes do things that were not the best, that were not as thoughtful, or they weren't the right thing to do. And there's a lot that we just cannot control,
right.
And that sometimes is really a mistake on our part. And that's another thing that we talk with people about with regularity is we're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. You're not perfect. And we once had, when we've had, our dogs in recent years have been elderly because we got them around the same time, and we had two dogs who died in the last several years, and now our two dogs who we have now are going to be 16 next month, or actually they're going to be 16 in June. And we were on vacation once a few years ago, and we had a dog who had a number of health problems, but we had been to the vet, and we were reassured that he was very stable. We had a pet caregiver who we had faith in, and he needed a number of medications, and he died while we were away. And we had given instruction because it was possible. We knew it was possible, and we came back, and we do believe that the pet caregiver did something that contributed to his death, and that he needed to have water available all the time because he was he had a congestive heart failure, and his medications were always diuretic. They were always making him lose water, making him pee a lot. And we came back, and the water bowl for the dog who was remaining was empty. And so we immediately thought the pet sitter wasn't checking the water enough. And we went through a lot of anguish about that.
I'm sure you would.
But what we came up to eventually is like, what can you do?
Yeah.
What can you do about that? There's nothing. We thought it was all in place. We had faith in this person. They'd taken care of our animals before, and we didn't employ them again. And we told them about what we found because we hoped that would make it better, that they would use better judgment. And who knows, maybe that was the one time that this happened.
Yeah, just the one.
But immediately we thought, did he dehydrate, and did that cause his death, given his condition? It was quite a thing to work through, and of course we were racked with guilt about
leaving.
Should we have left him? And but we do this thing with when we go on a vacation, we go away for a few days. If we're not bringing the dogs with us, we'll have them seen by the vet if they've got any sort of condition that we've got concerned, and we'll say, here, we're going to be going for 3 or 4 days or whatever, and we're leaving them with someone who we have faith in. Do you think it's okay? And we've always been told, yeah, they're stable. Yes. As far as we can tell. They might do some sort of evaluation. In this case, it might have been an ultrasound or something like that to see whether they were in fact having any fluid in their lungs. But the way that I've come to understand this is we can only do so much. And
accidents happen. I mean,
mistakes happen, accidents happen, and we have to. There is no other path forward but the path forward. Like there's nothing you can't. If you hold on to this,
well, no, it would
you know, an
eat
anger
you.
towards
And
someone else or toward yourself, it will eat at you endlessly.
too
And
much.
so we have to find ways to let go of the guilt, to let go of the anger. And so this person wrote that letter, and it's great that there was a very positive
Yeah.
response.
It may not have happened that way, obviously, but it happened for him. And I do think that that was really helpful for him. But even if nothing had happened, it was helpful for him, you
Yeah.
know, to let out all of that he was struggling with. So, but I mean, that's other things that you can do, you know, because we don't have the answers to everything. I mean, look, at human medicine isn't exact, neither is veterinary medicine.
Yeah.
You know, there are things that could happen that are way out of our control with our animals as our human, you know, families or friends, you know. So it's being, again, we come back to it a lot, being gentle with ourselves and taking
Yeah.
care of ourselves and
Yeah.
support from others that really know and understand what you're going through, you know.
Yeah. And asking the questions that you need to ask over and over and over again until you don't feel the need to ask them so much. That's the way I think about this is you got to do what you got to do to get the pain out of yourself, to get the uncertainty out of yourself, at least at a little bit of a distance. And sometimes that can feel very repetitive to both you and the people around you. But that is a big part of grief. It's a
That's
big
you
part of
need
grief.
to talk about it over and over again. Well, you know, you and I have sat with people over periods of time, individually or in the group, and they ask the same question all the time because
Yeah.
they need to work through it, you know. And so you sit with them, you support them, you talk about this is, you know, a very difficult time. It's, of course, you love them, you know, and you know, going through what they feel guilty about, you know, and we say we can't take away your guilt, and sometime at some point maybe you can forgive yourself because
Well,
things can happen and it's not anyone's fault.
yeah, you know, with this case with our dog, his name was Jack, and I mentioned him, I think, earlier. What we kept saying is, we can't bring him back. We can't fix
Mhm.
this. You can't fix it. And we might have had to say that over and over and over again. Say it to him. Say it to his ashes. We actually had asked the pet sitter to put him in we had an auxiliary freezer where we kept things that we weren't going to use for a while, or if we bought in bulk, we asked her to put him in the freezer, so that we could dispose of his body when we came home. And so, you know, we had some conversations with Jack's body,
Of course.
and with his ashes, but what it all boiled down to is, there's nothing that can be
Yeah.
done. But you may need to say that.
Have them
Oh,
come.
it's kind of like you may need to exhaust
Yeah, it's okay.
that question over and over again. Will I see them again? I don't know. I hope so. Maybe in my dreams, and maybe you will in your dreams. But it's the asking of the question that gives relief over time, over many, many repetitions.
And that's okay.
Yeah, it's all just part of it. It's
So
all just part of it, and you're not losing your mind. You're not, you're not being overly dramatic. You're doing what you need to do,
you're doing what you need to do.
and part of life. It's just part of life.
So we only have a minute. Should we do one more question, or
Do we have another question?
we have a bunch of them?
Okay.
All right. This could be pretty well. This could be on the same page as what we were talking about. Is Sadie with me? I think I hear her at times. Maybe see her. I want to know that she's okay. Do you think I can dream of her? I miss her so much. Yes, sometimes you may dream of them. Yes, sometimes
Yeah.
you hear them. Yes, sometimes you may feel them. Yes, sometimes you may feel their presence in some ways, and you may see some signs.
I think all of that is is right on target. I think that, you know, I once went to see a spiritualist to learn about loved ones, human loved ones who are no longer with us. One of the things that she said will always remain with me. She said, "Look, if you quiet yourself, if you calm yourself, if you maybe sit down and have a cup of tea and you invite them close, they'll be with you.
Ah, very
They'll
nice.
be with you. And you may feel them. You may, as you just, and as this person wrote, you may see them, but they'll be with you. And the more quiet you are and the more open you are to them being with you, the more likely you'll feel them in a deeper way.
Ah,
And I think that's really powerful,
that's beautiful.
really powerful. You invite them close, and there they are. And so I believe that. I practice that.
Mhm.
And that's part of my spirituality.
And even if they don't come, or you don't hear them, or you don't think you see them, or you don't dream of them, they're still in your heart.
They're still right here.
Yeah.
Everyone we've lost, we carry in our
Yep.
hearts.
With us all the time.
Yep. So great talking with you as always, Nancy,
Of
and I
course.
look forward to our next conversation.
Take care.